Okay, just an update on school board member attendance. Sammy is here virtually. Thanks, Sammy.
So I heard lots of really good discussion. I heard a little bit of laughter, and that's always a good thing when we come together. So what I wanted to do was spend a little bit of time with folks having an opportunity to report out on some of the conversations that were held. I know some of you took notes, others did not, but I'm sure that you can still give us the general sense of how that conversation went. I'm going to be taking notes because it's important for me as I'm thinking about our board goals, and I'm sure the same is true of Angela as she's thinking about your, and Mindy as you're thinking about your long-range plan for the next 5 years. So with that, I'm just going to open the floor for folks who want to share. And I'm going to turn it back over to Lou to call on folks.
Okay, I'm calling on everyone who wants to talk. Okay, go ahead, Mindy.
Pretty quick. So I had a great time. Was really loved that I had the opportunity to talk with Vivap and a student really giving his honest opinion on things. And what that really, my experience of that reinforced how important it is for us as a foundation to make sure that we are really gathering good feedback from students. And you know, it's like sort of a oh duh, but I'm not sure it was top of mind for me, so I really appreciate that. And I would also say, if I think back, not to call you all out because the board is awesome, you guys are great, but I'm trying to think like going back 3-4 years, and I don't know that I remember students being involved in school board, but they probably were, and I did, I don't know. But I think it's awesome, and I really appreciate you being here. And I had the opportunity to meet Eileen at the retreat, and just great. Thank you for doing this, because I know you already had a long day.
So in the past, we've had school student representatives, but they've come to our business meetings. And so this year, based on the feedback from our student reps last year, we rewrote the policy. And so now students come to our work sessions, which in a lot of ways was kind of the same thing. It was a no-brainer, but all of a sudden it just made sense that this is a better place for dialogue, less formal, and just an opportunity to learn alongside one another. And so that I appreciate that because that is a change we made for this year.
How are the student representatives chosen?
Student reps are chosen. It's a little different at all three of our schools. And some at one of our schools, it's an elected position. And another school, it's an elected position, but this is a secondary role. And in other schools, students are just identified based on some of the strengths they bring to the school and are asked to participate. The policy still gives flexibility building to building.
Go ahead, Wanda.
To follow that, I met with Zoe on one of my things, and Zoe, if you wouldn't mind, I would like you to share what you were talking about with the first goal and the students learning in high levels, what that means to you, because that was really, I thought that was really powerful what you said.
Well, I talked, in both of the different discussions, I mentioned it, just because high-level learning is very different and can mean a lot of different things for different students. So I think defining that in the beginning, I think, is going to be important in the school, and also, making sure that that high-level learning can be met for all students, so that one doesn't come to the expense of the others, because for some students, the high-level learning means rigorous classes and, like APs or whatever else that may mean, and for other students, that may mean something else. So making sure that there's that opportunity for everyone, but meeting that expectation doesn't mean that that's taking opportunities away from the other group who may, view that differently.
I really appreciated Zoe sharing that too, because it's also could impact like how the goals are perceived or the work of the district as well. When there's a word that is so ambiguous, like high, is it high level?
Yeah.
Because that's going to mean something very specific for folk, and it may not align across the community or even across staff and across students, as it's been pointed out. So I think that's would be really helpful. Yeah. Other comments from groups? Go ahead, Sarah.
I got to talk to Vipov about, in our second group, and we were talking about, a lot about level, I mean, it sort of comes down to the high level learning issue around math and the inequalities that are set up because some families, a student needs tutoring because they want to be in that high level math class, they can pay for the tutoring. A student needs to do better on the SAT, and so they can pay for the SAT prep. And that just the sort of the expectations of what that higher level is and the ability of students to reach it is often determined by the family situation. And both the school district and potentially the foundation, as they decide on what to fund, have roles to play in making sure that those inequalities, that one, families don't need to pay for tutoring at all, so that whoever you are, you have access to the help you need to reach the goal that you're set for yourself. So,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Zoe.
I'm glad that was also brought up because I know me and Viv have had this conversation also with other students, and just I liked how in like the third goal it was talked about like also different types of learning for students who maybe that's not what they're planning on doing after high school, but also I think it's important to like not forget that there's also plenty of students and both equally valuable who are planning to go like to college, so making sure that those students, these new just as valuable goals that are like, set out to help students who are not planning to do that doesn't mean that it's going to impact how those other students are going to succeed, because obviously those high rigorous level classes are essential for someone who wants to go to college, because our school may like have a different curriculum and we might be doing things differently, but that doesn't obviously impact a school who's like another state, who is a prep school or whatever, who instead doesn't really care that there's students who can't afford that because they're there to go into these Ivies. So making sure that there's enough opportunities and support for students from families who can afford tutoring and families who can't, and allowing them to take those classes and have that opportunity, because I think that's really valuable, and I think it's a really precious thing about public education, because these APs or high-level classes allow students who are maybe in like less fortunate situations to still succeed and have that really high-level education if they wish. So making sure that that's protected for those students, I think, is going to be important going on.
I think sometimes one thing that happens when we're talking about like making sure everybody's included is there becomes like a fear that something's going to get taken away, and maybe that's something we can include in some of the narrative or around the goal, that nobody is taking away opportunities, like you're saying. That way it doesn't feel like that, perhaps, that those opportunities still exist, because I know when we've been talking about some of the changes over the last couple of years, people think that things are gone that are not, that are mentioned, like some of the, especially for the students that are going into the into fields that need certain subjects like math. That's a continual conversation, right? And so I think that it's important that we make it clear that to shift the way the goals are written doesn't take away those opportunities. That way that perception isn't there, and that people know that that's a valued part of the Corvallis School District education as well.
I'm curious for foundation members, as you think about the sort of where you are starting to undertake your own plan for the next 5 years, are there things that resonate or stood out to you with regards to these goals that you think I could see the alignment or the opportunity there? Because and the reason I ask that is because oftentimes when we come together, one of our intended outcomes is alignment across both boards. And so I'm just curious, as these start to firm up a little bit more, if you have that sense of that, or if you feel like there's lack of alignment. I'd just be curious to know more about that.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, hello. So my name was mentioned quite a few times, actually. So just as a quick background, I'm a sophomore at Crescent Valley, and I'm also a high school leader of SAFE from Crescent Valley, Students Advocating for Equity. Yesterday, we had our first district-wide meeting for the 2023-2024 year, and we discussed a lot of these kind of overarching goals about excellent learning experience, equitable systems, relevant and engaging learning, as well as healthy communities. One of the comments that stood out to me from the SAFE group from the high school and middle school level was that they feel like historically the school board has provided and I don't mean to be rude, a band-aid solution that really doesn't fix the underlying systematic problems that exist within our school district, as well as our curriculum and our educational system in general. So whether it may be with the new curriculum or generally the trend that we're going in, one of the comments that I heard from the audience yesterday was that they truly feel that it's sort of an, again, band-aid effort to address that doesn't actually address the core issues and the root of the systematic problems that students of colors face in the school district, especially those from Latino and Black communities. One of the things that I heard from a member of the Latino community, he's a senior this year, taking AP Calculus BC, was that he quoting him, was that taking higher level math classes and showing academic excellence throughout high school is the only way for people like us from a community like myself to actually better our own people. And what he meant by this is that only by showing academic excellence through high school can members of the Latino community, Black community, get into, for example, top colleges, good schools that will actually impact their community and that will actually uplift their communities from these systematic problems and oppression that they've been facing for generations. But that was my comment. Thank you.
Did they talk about why we use that term institutionally underserved at your meeting yesterday? I had to teach yesterday, so I couldn't go. Did they talk about that word in particular to you all?
Yeah, I think we definitely spoke about institutional racism.
No, I mean like in the board goals, how it says institutionally underserved. Did they tell you what that meant?
I think yes, but
Okay.
another thing that I feel is that this is a very broad statement to say elevate and center voices of institutionally underserved students in both decisions and actions. So I think this is 100% a very good goal to have and one of the best strategies that we can have to achieve equitable systems. But yes, of course, again, it says elevate and center the voices of institutionally underserved students, but to put it in the most simplest terms, students of colors in our community still don't feel satisfied with what they have right now, with the amount of impact they have right now.
That makes sense. I just wanted to, I don't know if everybody's familiar with that term, and the reason why, I'll just put out there, I advocated for that is because it calls attention to systems versus the people themselves. It takes away the responsibility of the individuals to do the work, and it's asking for systematic change. It's saying systematically what is going on here. So it's one tiny step towards what you're bringing up, and I really appreciate that you're letting us know that we have a lot of stuff to do too, to be able to do that for you all. So thank you. But yeah, and we should probably, I know you asked the board for, do you want to repeat what you asked from the foundation board?
Oh.
just from the foundation board, again, the question about both alignment between what you're seeing in this document as well as you begin your work, do you see areas that are sort of jumping off points?
Yeah, go ahead, Nina.
So one thing that came up in several of the conversations was the degree to which I think over the last few years, the two organizations have grown in alignment, and I think that's super valuable. And for me, at least as a board member, as we're thinking about our next 5-year plan, and knowing that the budgets are getting tighter for the district and the ambitions are appropriately lofty, I think knowing where flexible funding, outside funding to support some of these efforts, like whether it's around sustainability, whether it's around supporting more programming to address some of these institutional issues that the students of color are facing, knowing where those needs are. Because for me as a board member, and we talk about this, there's a real tension, I think, between growing endowments, which are stable, but only spit out a tiny bit of money every year, and growing our more flexible funding where we have more discretion every year on what to spend. And for me, at least, really understanding what are the needs so that we can have specific fundraising targets and think about ways that we can make sure that anything we're providing is not just a one-shot, but is actually supporting systemic change in the district. I think values-wise, we're very aligned. But also just figuring out, how can we actually make a sustainable difference, both environmentally and financially, to what the district's trying to accomplish. That would be helpful for me.
We have a few more minutes. Looks like 3.5. I did want to mention real quick, you all are welcome to stay, but it's 8:04 for student reps. And so just wanted to remind you all that what time it was. AKA, you can leave whenever you want, but you're welcome to stay. And I think we're going to be going into a break after this too, aren't we?
Yep.
So yeah. Any other comments from your groups? Go ahead, Susan.
I was just going to add, as a new member of the foundation board, that I would not have thought that these were developed in isolation of one another. Because just what I know so far, again, having new eyes, there is clear alignment and almost, mapping on of each other. So that is exciting to me, and I think, how we can continue to support the board and the schools is really exciting.
Awesome. Does Sammy have his hand up? I heard, oh. No? Okay. Usually when we say, oh, that means somebody online had their hand up. Okay. Edwin.
Well, I just want to, again, thank you all for coming and spending time with us this evening. It feels good for both groups to be together and for us to be working alongside one another, and for us to have feedback from you, because, again, these goals have a strong community component, and as members of the community, your feedback helps us, so, for sure.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'll make sure this is one of my last comments because I think we seem to be wrapping up.
Usually when we say, oh, that's
so,
somebody online had their hand up.
no problem.
Well, I just want to, again, thank you all for
I'll just wait.
coming and spending time with us.
Is Sammy's?
I apologize. There was some audio issues where I wasn't able to hear some of the discussion.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Vibhav.
Yeah.
No, just want to. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, Vibhav was talking, and then do you want to go after?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just wanted to address how Miss Williams was speaking about growing endowments and addressing institutional racism. Something that I would like to give a personal anecdote about and a personal experience about is the quality of teachers we have in our school district. And I think we have some of the best teachers in our school district. I feel privileged to go to a school which has the quality of teachers that I have. One of the things that I would like to say, and I will be naming him out, is that my current math teacher is Paul Buchanan. Not a lot of you, maybe a lot of you know him. Any of you who have students who have taken this class or are having students who have taken this class, I'm sure they've come home and told you that they got a B on their test or they got a C on their test, but then later that day told you that he's the best teacher and that he had the most amazing lecture that really made them understand the concept that he was trying to teach. So to quickly summarize that, I'll give an sort of like a paraphrasing of one of the lectures he did recently regarding trigonometry. So we're doing trigonometry, and he said that basically that many teachers in the school district aren't paid well. So, or many teachers, across the U.S. aren't paid well. And some of the things that they do is that they take summer jobs. And then he mentioned one of the other math teachers and how he picks blueberries over the summer. And then he said, I run a triangle factory over the summer. I have 4 types of students. The first student can solve triangles really fast and really efficiently. The second student can solve problems really slow, but very efficiently. The third type of person is very fast, but isn't very efficient. And the last person is very slow and isn't efficient. So what does he do? He fires the last person, because they're very slow and they're not very efficient. But then he goes on to talk about how he thinks the second and third person have more potential and they can actually do well. So he gives the first person a raise to basically teach these other two students how they can solve triangles more efficiently and faster. To come to the end, towards the end, he says, most teachers want you to be like that first person. They want you to be someone who can solve the problems really fast, which means that you have to memorize a ton of formulas and do them very efficiently. But I want you to be me. And so those are the types of things that really make us connect with him when he says that he wants us to be like him. He wants, in a funny way, he said, I want you to be the person who runs the factory, not work in it, which means that every formula that he shows us, he derives it on the spot. He goes from the most basic triangle to actually showing us how the formula is made. And to students, he says, for the next 45 minutes, go to sleep. Because if you don't want to know how the formula is made, you can just wake up 45 minutes later, see the formula on the board, and memorize it. But for the students who really want to know, stay awake for the next 45 minutes. And in this way, I can assure you that, I've only had him for a month now, but I already know that he is the best math teacher I've ever had, because no other math teacher has connected with me at that sort of level, has explained problems and explained formulas at that sort of level. And how he connects with the students is so good. And even though they might not get the best grades in his class, even though they will get B's and C's because his tests are hard. For example, the next test coming up, he gave a disclaimer in the beginning of the unit, this test is not intended for you to finish it. So he makes the test tough, really tough. But his teaching methodology, how he connects with the teachers, is at a different level. So if we have more teachers, regardless of what discipline they teach, math, English, who connect with the student in the way that Mr. Buchanan, an example of a teacher that I brought up, does with other students, I think we will actually have a community where we will actually foster the good values that we want to have. And this is one of the key steps we can take in addressing things like institutional racism, for example, because I know if a lot of students, Black and Latino, any race they may be, if they take his class, they will feel like they have learned a lot of information that they felt underserved by their other teachers before. So to quickly put it, I think we need more teachers like him, and not the teachers who write the formulas on the board, say, memorize this, do these problems, come and take this test. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vibhav. And Sammy, did you have a comment?
I'm not sure if I can follow that. Thank you for
It's,
those comments. I just want to say thank you and I want to appreciate listening to this conversation. Makes me very grateful. I want to share my apologies not being with you in person today. I'm just out of Oregon School Board Association visit to High Desert AISD in Redmond, but listening back to home and seeing how it takes this full circle of community support, board support, and student voice, and our educators embracing relevant learning and supporting our students to thrive is very fulfilling, and just want to be very grateful for this conversation.
thank you, Sammy. And you thank them already, huh? Yeah, thank you all for being with us this evening. You're welcome to stay after our break for policy review updates, if that sounds exciting to you. You're welcome to stay, and you're welcome to head out. And thanks for staying a little bit extra, too, to our student reps. And we're going to take a 5-minute break while we shift. Okay, next up is policy review update. Okay, Ryan?
All right. So I know our primary goal is us getting these board goals adopted and approved. And so I'll continue to make progress there. At the same time, we know that what we wanted to have as our area of focus for this year was around some policy development. And so since we met last, I had an opportunity to meet with Spencer Lewis from OSBA. Based on the information you shared with Kristen when she came to talk about our work around board goals or around policy, pardon me, there were 3 theme areas. One was around policies that impact students in the classroom. There's one that is about policies that impact community relations. And then the third area was policies that support staff. And so I just wanted to give you an update in terms of where we are with that. Again, there's no action tonight. We don't need to move forward with it. I just wanted to provide you with some additional information for consideration as we move towards that. So in terms of policies, students in the classroom, there are a number of policies that we can spend some time looking at. Policies is around co-curricular and extracurricular activities. It's an optional policy, but one of the things that we could look at specifically is what offerings are being provided and whether students. So again, co-curricular and extracurricular activities, that's one of those policy areas that the board could consider spending some time with. Another one is around student organizations. And again, it's fairly similar to the one around curricular and extracurriculars, but it's about organizations beyond those standard extracurricular, co-curricular activities. Equal educational opportunity, JB, focuses on identifying specific areas that the board and district could focus resources on. So again, we've spent some time around equal educational opportunities in the past, but it's a policy we could go back and spend some time on. Policy JFC, student conduct. Much of the content comes from statutes and rules, but we have some flexibility in terms of additional language. So again, that's an area that shows up oftentimes in our student handbooks, but it's driven by policy and in some ways OARs. Policy JFA, students' rights and responsibilities. And again, that's regarding pupil conduct and discipline. So another area, if we're thinking about those policies that we have in place that impact students. And then policy JHH, which is student suicide prevention. And we have spent some time on that policy in the last couple of years. We've had some conversation about that. But also in that policy, there's a piece around prevention and what is our prevention strategies and the work that's happening in our district. So it's another area that folks could spend some time looking about and learning about, which again has impact on students. So those are some of the policy examples that come up related to students in our schools, and that was one of those 3 themes. Again, around community relations, both community relations and staff support. There's some policy there, but there's also the opportunity to develop policy. So again, policy BDDH is about public participation at board meetings. And we've done some work on that policy, and so that might be one that we could bring forward, spend some time with. And it also aligns with some of the conversation and work we've just done around the roles and responsibilities of the board and superintendent. So that's a consideration. And then we could also think about, are there other new policies around community engagement that we want to develop? And because there's not necessarily a boilerplate policy coming from OSBA beyond that BDDH, but it's something that the board could consider if that's an area that you want to focus and spend some time on. And then finally, the policies around supporting staff. It's the same thing. We have a local wellness policy that has some language about support for staff within it. And that is a policy that Melissa's been working on, so something that's going to come up fairly soon. But at the same time, you could pull that out and develop like a staff wellness policy that would stand alone. So again, as we think about those three areas that you highlighted, there are some examples of policies related to students' experiences in schools, everything from extracurriculars to expectations around student behavior and conduct to prevention strategies related to suicide. So kind of a broad scope there when we think about policies related to community. There's not a lot of policy there, and so there's an opportunity there if we wanted to enhance something. And then finally around support for staff, the wellness policy, or if you want to pull something out, there's the opportunity to do that too. So I just wanted to, I'll answer your question in just a sec, but I just wanted to give you an update. Again, knowing that our main thrust and emphasis is on those board goals, but in the background, I'm going to continue to do some work to prepare us for once we've had our November and December work sessions are typically our SIP dinners where principals come and talk. So it's probably going to be January before we get back to policy development. But at the same time, I wanted to put this in front of you now so it's on your mind and you know that there's some work happening in the background. So with that, Sarah.
Yeah, as we think about these policies, and specifically with the policies that support staff, as soon as you put that up, I had this thought of how much of this is policy and how much of it is contract. Mm-hmm. And is there an issue with writing policies about how we're supporting staff, that if that's, like, I'm just wondering if there's an overlap there that could create some issues.
When I talked to Spencer, he is an attorney for OSBA and does a lot of work around policy. And so in our discussion, we talked about drafting, if we were going to do policy whole cloth, we would do some development and then I would run it by him to think about those implications and receive some feedback. Because some of our policies, current policies, are required. Some of them are optional. And so that really comes down to what the law states. And so I wouldn't want us to get out too far ahead of ourselves with some of those implications. I would be continuing to communicate and make sure that we're within our kind of the roles and scope of the board.
Go ahead, Judah.
Thinking back to the policies that are affecting students, is there ways, as we're thinking about policy changes, even for required policies that we have existing, to be in communication with not just students, but also with expert organizations? I'm thinking specifically of the Oregon Alliance to Prevent Suicide, which has done a lot of really, really good work and research on how schools can impact in suicide prevention and postvention. Are those opportunities available to us as we're exploring how to be examining these policies, given the most current, best information?
Yeah, that seems like that would be doable. When we wrote when the policy around dress code was written, we looked at the work of NOW and some other organizations to incorporate best practices into that policy. So that was an example of somewhere where there was like a written document we could pull from, but if there's experts to learn from as well, I think there's the opportunity to think about how we'd want to do that.
Sammy, go ahead, you have your hand up.
I do. I just want to, it's a comment more than a question. I feel this is the right direction, Ryan. Thank you for sharing the priorities that the board talked about and how those policies fits within those priorities. And just to make sure when we put those policies on the agenda to reiterate those priorities as we go. I like the strategy that there's some work happening in the background until it's time for us to adopt them and put them on the agenda for the board later on. So just want to say supportive of the direction.
Thanks, Sammy. Any other comments or questions? I was just gonna say, wow, you made that a little bit hard because it all sounds good. So I was more like, what order can we do these in, like, than anything? And I like how you're saying, like, we can develop, I think we do need to develop a community relations policy in particular, because it's all centered on just engagement at board meetings, like everything that we have on the webpage, everything in policy, and our engagement could be more than that. And I think it would help provide guidance for community organizations and community members that want to engage with us but don't know how, because there's no guidance on that. And so I think that could be a good way, and also to say, like, well, this is what we agreed upon, so we're not getting way out there and stuff too. Do you have something, Therese?
I did actually just think, I'm thinking back on the earlier part of our meeting and the opportunity to spend, small group time with our student representatives. I'm really excited about having student-focused policies and having them here to, with a more engaged role with the board, to hear their perspectives on those. So I think that those policies are gonna, I think we're gonna do really good work with them.
Thanks, Ryan.
It only took me 8 years to figure out that student reps should come to work sessions instead of business meetings. But I think that's the way to do this.
And I mean, it's happening. That's the important part, right? Okay, well, thanks for that update, and looking forward to seeing them come through as we work on them. And the next thing on the agenda is board member comments. Does anybody have comments? Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I just want to share that after our meeting last week, when we talked about our goals, I heard from several community members who were strongly in support of you clarifying the language so that community could understand it, and having goals that had something like the graduate profile or something, so that there was understanding from the community when we say these things, what does it actually mean for a student who's going to graduate? So I just wanted to share that there was positive comments from the community about those things.
Thanks, Sarah. Anybody else? Go ahead, Chris.
I just wanted to make a comment that I witnessed. It's been a couple weeks, but at the Crescent Valley Corvallis High School football game. This is going to sound really minimal, but I want to explain. The cheerleaders all did a dance together. Both teams did one dance together. And I just really want to acknowledge the positivity that really made across the board, because they're rival schools. And so many times I hear about high school kids, when one school is in the playoffs, the other school doesn't really support it. And I just thought this was a really good way to just start showing that building of support to each other, which they should be supporting each other, right? If one's at the playoffs, the other high school should be there supporting them. And I thought, good start and good way to just really promote a cohesive community of us being together. So I just wanted to share that.
Go ahead, Judah.
I want to express gratitude to, we get a lot of educators inviting us to events in our emails, and I'm just really grateful for that. In particular, I was thinking a lot of times I'm not available in the evenings for activities, but I got an invite to the board to attend some orchestra band events, and I was really excited to see some dates and some times that I could make. And I'm just really grateful for this knowledge and these continued invitations to these events to see the wonderful things that our students are doing, and I'm just very happy to see it.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, I know conferences are coming up, and so I just want to thank the teachers who are prepping for those that are rolling out, because I don't think we meet before some of those, right? Maybe we meet just before the conferences. So events, thanks for your work on that, all the teachers and staff. And I don't have any other comments, so I think we're good. Oh, Sammy's hand's up, just kidding.
Well, I got two brief comments. First of all, really gratitude for you, the chair, for the work you do behind the scenes, responding to community members over their emails and questions. We acknowledge how much work it takes and appreciate you with your leadership on it. Second thing, I want just to remind my colleagues on the board for the OSBA convention that's going to happen on the 9th, 10th, and 11th of November. So if you haven't registered or if you have any questions about it, please reach out to Kim. I believe the registration is about to close, and it's going to be a good time. The program is really exciting.
Thanks, Sammy. Okay, I think we're good. And so with no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 8:37 p.m. Have a good night, everyone.